Disclaimer, this presentation was produced and funded in whole with federal funds from the U.S. Department of Education under contract number GS10F-0112J with the American Institutes for Research, AIR. Carolyn Limpia serves as the contracting officer's representative. The content of this presentation does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the U.S. Department of Education, nor does the mention of trade names, commercial products, or organizations imply endorsement by the U.S. government. With that, again, just really quickly, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them into the chat. We'll answer them as they come up, but we will try to save some time at the end to answer other questions that you may have. I noticed really quickly that some people are having some issues with the more option. I guess I'll have to check the settings, but just don't worry about it right now. Please, if you can, with that, introduce yourself in the chat in the state that you're from. Would much appreciate that. So with that being said, I will hand it over to Marcella.
Great, thanks so much, Long. And welcome everyone to today's webinar on student recruitment, part of our Links Universal TA Wednesday webinar series. Today is September 29th, 2021, and our webinar today will run from 3 to 4:15 p.m. Eastern, or for those of you on the West Coast, noon to 1:15 p.m. A little bit about our Universal TA webinars. As I mentioned earlier, today's session is part of the Links Universal TA Wednesday webinar series. For those of you who maybe have not attended before, this is a monthly series on topics that matter most to the field. They're topics that either have been recommended by some of you, requested, or that we've gotten lots of questions about, or Octave has helped us to identify as well. The series supports states in building their capacity regarding important topics. And as Long said, all these webinars are recorded so that we can make them available to you on our Links YouTube channel. As we get started, I did want to mention to you a couple of resources that are available on this topic through Links. So within our resource collection, I encourage you to look for our Ideal Distance Education and Blended Learning Handbook. It's the 7th edition, which is an update. I think it was, I want to say from the end of 2020. So a recent updated version of that. In our Links community, we also have our program management group, which is a great place to continue these discussions on this topic. And thank you, Long, for putting those links into the chat for both of those. All right, so let's move on quickly to our presenters. Today we have 4 fabulous presenters. We have Carol Clymer, who's the co-director for the Institute for the Study of Adult Literacy, Jacqueline Kringle, who's the Deputy Executive Director for Kentucky Skills U, Christopher McElroy, who's the Director of Adult Education at Southern Suburban College in Illinois, and Carolyn Zachary, who's the State Director and Education Administrator of the Adult Education Office for the California Department of Education. And let me tell you a little bit more about each of them. As I said, Dr. Carol Clymer is the co-director of the Institute for the Study of Adult Literacy and the Goodling Institute for Research and Family Literacy at Penn State University. She has over 45 years of experience implementing and evaluating programs to improve the education and employment prospects of adult education learners and their families. She has authored numerous publications and is a frequent presenter at conferences and on virtual webinars. Jacqueline is Deputy Executive Director of the Office of Adult Education at Kentucky Skills U. Her tenure spans over 15 years in adult learning and development, which includes leadership, administrative roles, technical assistance, professional learning, and performance and accountability. She's also worked in the private sector, developing an enterprise-wide training system for a banking financial organization, and she is also one of our Links moderators. Chris McElroy is the Director of Adult Education at South Suburban Community College in South Holland, Illinois. Over the past 4 years, he has created several social media pages for the university and the IACEA board. During this time and prior to the pandemic, as a result of his work, SSC's adult education program has received a 30% bump in enrollment and has created dozens of new connections among the students and the community. Last and certainly not least, Dr. Carolyn Zachary is currently the State Director and Adult and Education Administrator for the Adult Education Office at the California Department of Education, where her office is responsible for administration and management of the federal WIOA Title II grant, as well as co-administration of the state-funded adult education programs. She is currently a representative on the National Association of State Directors of Adult Education Board of Directors, and she's also, outside of education, on the executive board of the California chapter PEO. With that, I will turn it over to Carol to get us started with today's presentation.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to be here with you today. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to talk about what the research says about adult education recruitment, which you probably know already and do, but I'm just going to reinforce what you're doing in terms of what the research says. And while I'm talking, if you could put in the chat, what data do you use to inform recruitment strategies? That's one of the key pieces of the research, is using data to inform recruitment strategies. And this essentially means that it's important to collect data through interviews, through focus groups, through surveys and questionnaires, and an intake to make strategic research decisions. Next slide, please. And one of the other really key findings in the research is know your target population, know who you're serving. Who are the potential learners? What are their geographic, demographic, and psychographic characteristics? Use this information for outreach and marketing strategies. Also know about their motivations and their goals and why would they consider enrolling in your program, and then make sure that you touch upon those things when you're doing your recruitment. Next slide, please. And know your target population. It's really important to know about the barriers that they're facing and how can you help address them. And then also, what support services do you provide, and what mental health resources, such as mental health resources or financial literacy, are you providing? And then again, include those in your recruitment materials that you do have those kinds of services for them. And so I think we're getting some information in the chat here. People are using data to understand regional needs, the income and education levels of the population. That's great. Christopher says they use data from their state data management system, DAISY, and they get a lot of students from the areas in their district and state. Burr Guthrie says they're using the American Community Survey for limited English proficiency. That's great. These are great suggestions. And they relate to the next slide. Know your target community. Who are you providing programs to, and what's of interest to that community? What's of value to that community? Who are your community partners, and how will you connect with them? And again, you want to make sure that you reach out to that community. You want to make sure that you target specific recruitment activities to that community, and that you do things that will directly help you reach who you're trying to serve, and you work with partners that will help you reach who you are trying to serve. And then finally, this is like the number one finding and the number one way that people find out about your program. And what the research says about recruitment is that capitalize on word of mouth. Your learners who stay in your program are your best advocates for your program. And they can help tell their friends and their family about your program. By the same token, if they don't like your program, then they're not going to tell your friends and your family. So make sure that you use the friends and the family of your audience to help you recruit. Do you know someone who needs a high school equivalency program, or needs to learn English to find a job, or wants to build some academic skills for college? Next slide, please. And so as you capitalize on word of mouth, you want to foster your connections between learners and potential learners. The power of one learner can bring in 4, 5, 6 other learners, and those learners can bring other learners. And then, as I said, are you promoting a high quality program that addresses the needs of your target population? If you're not, then people aren't going to come to your program. And I think next we turn it over to Jackie. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Carol. And it's good to be here with everybody. And I appreciate having been invited, and I'm so glad there's so many participants. I'll be talking a little bit about branding and or rebranding. Next slide, please. So I started with adult education in the mid-90s. And when I started, Kentucky Department for Adult Education and Literacy actually was located in the Cabinet for Workforce Development. And then in 2000, we were reorganized under the Council on Post-Secondary Education. And at that time, we changed our names to just Kentucky Adult Education and dropped the literacy because we felt that literacy and numeracy and all kinds of other services were under the umbrella of adult education. And then in 2019, we were reorganized under the Cabinet for Education and Workforce Development. And between that reorganization and our time with the Council on Post-Secondary Education, we had become Kentucky Skills U Office of Adult Education. So let me share a little bit about our journey. We had, and next slide, please. We had several conversations about how we could look at branding and having some consistency in a brand, but more importantly, making it a brand that was inviting and that didn't label students, or it avoided language that would indicate remediation or to that extent. So actually, we put things in motion when our vice president at the time had a conversation with a communications agency, and they were working with veterans and PTSD. And they were doing market research, and they were trying to figure out why the veterans weren't accessing services. And so at that time, they found that one, veterans felt stigmatized by the fact they had issues with PTSD, and they felt even more helpless or stigmatized when they accessed services. So that got us moving in the direction of thinking seriously about what we were going to do about a brand. And anybody who's been in adult education for any length of time knows that getting people to understand and know what adult education is and destigmatizing it as someone who's dropped out of high school and needs to go back to school are two of the greatest challenges. So for instance, sometimes we talk about adult education and literacy connotates illiteracy. Basic can mean fundamental skills. And a lot of times programs are just looked at as high school equivalency test preparation, which connotates high school dropout. So we wanted to not be a one-note song or basically the GED program down the street. And our goal was for students, destigmatize or make a brand that was inviting, but also for other stakeholders like policymakers and legislators, our partners, et cetera. We wanted to communicate the criticality of adult education and the broader scope of services that we offer. Next slide, please. So we had our concept and we needed to do our market research. And obviously our primary audience were students. And as I said before, we wanted to have them feel that adult education was a legitimate service. And we wanted others to understand and have an understanding of our credibility as a part of the education system. So we started out and we discussed that we wanted to have skills or skilling up or upskilling as kind of the base of what we wanted to communicate. And so we developed a number of different brands and kind of taglines and logos. And we went and we conducted focus groups and interviews, a lot of them with administrators and students, and we got their take on it. And we came up with Skills U, as in skills you know, developing skills for you, but we use the U as in it could be used as university or a credible institution for skilling up. And so as we went through this process, I do, and if you're thinking of going through the process yourself, want to caution you that don't forget when you're looking, if you're looking at branding, to look at acronyms, because we know in our educational system, we have a tendency to abbreviate. And one of our suggestions had been Skilling Up Kentucky, which I'll leave you to figure that acronym out. And we decided that probably wasn't going to be the most appropriate acronym. So we left that one out. But again, we wanted to be student focused. We wanted to provide a comfort level for students to go into an agency and know that they were of value and the services that they would receive would focus on them and not the fact that they dropped out of school. And also pertaining to skills, we added a tagline that said credentials, college, and career. And we wanted to do that because, one, we wanted to indicate that the outcomes with adult education could include credentials like the GED or HiSET. We also in Kentucky have Kentucky Essential Skills Certificate and Kentucky Career Readiness Certificate. And then we wanted to indicate how we helped students move on to college and career. So hence that became the tagline with the brand or logo. Next slide, please. So to me, or I guess I'll couch it in my terms. I see a brand as having a life cycle. And so when we started with the brand, we had Kentucky Skills U, and as you can see the tagline there, and we wanted to be sure that we had consistent messaging across all the local providers. So we provided them with marketing or outreach materials that had the logo on it. We expected that they would have signage that would indicate Kentucky Skills U. We were very pointed about making sure that not only were we communicating heavily with the local providers, but we are taking every opportunity we could to inform our partners, legislators, policymakers, putting things on the website, sending out announcements and alerts to the change in the logo and what it meant, and wrapping around a lot of outreach to be sure that the change occurred and people understood what the change was. I'm going to send out a question to, I wanted to ask, have you branded or rebranded your services? If so, how? And if not, what might your brand logo look like? So as part of the life cycle, we're looking at rollout, reiteration, wrapping those outreach messages around the logo, and getting awareness out there. And once you have awareness, then your logo starts to mature and audience have supposedly an understanding of what that logo is and what that tagline means. So it's been about, I'd say 6, maybe 7 years since we branded or rebranded. And of course, we all know that the last almost 2 years now has been rather turbulent. So We haven't done as much outreach, and for good reason. A lot of our programs have been closed due to the pandemic, and a lot of the messaging and communication has been done virtually. So it's a time that we take a look at our logo, and we have had some criticism, constructive criticism, that perhaps students and other stakeholders don't have a clear understanding of SkillsU and the services offered there. So you want to be sure when you have a logo and a tagline that it's your calling card. It's telling people what you do and the services you offer. So it needs to resonate, particularly with students, but also with your partners and the people in the state that you provide credible services, quality services. And so you have to ask yourself, is it outdated? Could it be more current? Is it representing the agency that you are currently? As I said, we had some reorganization. And so of late, we have been more purposeful in putting Office for Adult Education, Kentucky SkillsU. And you'll see down below there that one of our providers, and we're just thrilled about this, actually got a highway green sign. And because the two campuses are post-secondary education, she did put in there SkillsU GED Center just to delineate. But I think when you think about your brand, it really needs to speak to your students, obviously, but it also needs to bring that awareness of adult education services. And that has always been a challenge for us. So I'm hoping that sharing our branding story has helped you think about it a little bit more. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christopher McElroy. I'm the Director of Adult Education for South Suburban College. And before I start, I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out some of my Illinois people that I see in this meeting right now. So, hey guys, thank you for coming. Next slide. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure everyone just starts. A lot of people get nervous or are uneasy about being on social media or starting social media marketing or even a page just for their group. So what you should do is just start, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, or Facebook, just create. We tell our students to experiment, be brave. They haven't been in school in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and we want them to figure out how to do fractions and go take a test. However, most of us don't want to go download Twitter or Facebook or do a YouTube video. So we need to follow our own advice and be as brave as our students and our clients and make sure that we are willing to put ourselves out there. However, you don't need to start things from scratch. There are a lot of resources and links that I've put in this PowerPoint that can help you have a jumping off point in social media. So don't just think you have to go in blind. I'm going to try to give you some resources to make sure that you know how to move forward. So of course, how everyone else said, you need to know your audience. Are you primarily ABE? Are you an ESL? Do you do civics? Do you do workforce? Are you, what location is your organization in? Where are your students coming from? I know all of us probably have some giant statewide database that we have to enter in all of our data about students and enrollment into. You should use that for you. Pull that information over the last few fiscal years and see what are the towns and cities and the areas where our students are coming from. And once you determine that, it lets you determine where you need to advertise. You need to create your social media identity. Whether you're in another institution, whether you're in a college, and that institution already has their own social media page, it needs to be separate from yours. You don't want to just start posting your own material mixed in with everyone else's. You can do that, but before you want to establish your own identity. You don't want to get lost in the shuffle, posting your stuff alongside regular college material. You should have an established identity apart from your institution. And as you see in these pictures below, all of our stuff says South Suburban College Department of Adult Education. We have our own little logo that's similar to our college, but different enough so that someone knows they're looking at the adult ed side and not the college credit page. Next slide. You also want to assign someone as your social media manager. This person needs to know who is going to maintain your social media accounts, who's going to respond to questions. And people will find you and ask questions. Even if you say this is the adult education, GED site, they might ask questions about, oh, how can I get a culinary class? And there need to be someone checking on the page a few times a week to make sure that those questions are answered and to make sure that students don't feel like the page is dead. Because if students and clients, people are going to be on your Facebook page all hours of the day, all hours of the night. And if they see that you haven't responded to something or posted something in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, then the page is done. There's another social media page, another handle that they'll never visit again. That's why the person who you put in charge of this needs to be familiar with your registration, your student services, any class procedures, and also know who to contact in the college. And so if they call asking you for the nursing program, you just make sure that you send them a message and say, hey, make sure you contact this person. And just that little bit of time will go a long way into making the student feel that the college cares about them and they're paying attention always. One of the things that you need to not do is resist just assigning the tech savvy person in your institution or in your department as the social media manager. I know we all have that person that we work with whenever something on the computer side breaks, that we run to and say, oh, so-and-so, can you fix this, please? That person should be your that person can or cannot be your social media manager. Just because they know they're really good with Excel or really good with PowerPoint or Outlook does not mean they know anything about Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. One of the examples I'll give is my boss. My boss is a couple of years older than me. He's great in the tech front, knows Excel, Adobe, all that thing, but he did not have a Facebook or any social media account until we created our page in 2016. So he was the last person who should be in charge of anything. Next slide. You want to make sure you avoid doing that with your own staff. Also, yeah, that's a good point from Estella. The person who is your social media manager needs to have good judgment, because sometimes if a student or someone posts something inappropriate as a comment, they have to be there to delete it or be diplomatic and answer it right away. Or if you're just sharing something that's general information, it needs to be appropriate for your page. So yeah, not only does the person need to be on their task, you have to make sure it's someone with good judgment. That's a good point. Now again, you can create, but you don't have to recreate the wheel. One of the links that I was going to put in the chat is a website called GCF Learn Free. Now, this isn't the end all be all of all websites, but I'm a big fan of it. I give this website to students and instructors and all of the staff, and it pretty much has a very detailed, broken down list of how to do any technological thing. If you go there, if you click on the social media pages, it tells you literally what is TikTok, this is how you post, this is what your post means. And you can go right down the board, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of your social media websites, and it goes list. And some of them even have YouTube pages to let you know how to do these things. Recruitment begins with your brand. Social media is not just a place where you put flyers and registration dates. If you are just regurgitating your registration dates and event information, no one's going to come to your page. Students need a reason to come there in the first place. You should be posting things, maybe job fairs, food banks, uplifting stories, things going on in your district or area that's relevant to the students. Content needs to constantly be created. Let's say if you were to go to the South Suburban College Adult Ed page right now, there's posts up there about Hispanic Heritage Month that's going on right now. We just did a big push for Adult Education Family Literacy Week. And these are all things that are not directly related to my program, but as people see it, it builds your social media page, builds your footprint and makes sure more people are visiting your page. And if more people visit your page, they know what you do, and then you'll be able to spread that information outwards. The rule is adopt an 80-20 rule. 80% of all of your content needs to not be self-promotion and marketing. And this content can come from a number of areas, and I'll detail some of that on my next couple of slides. But one of the most important things to do is make sure you get permission to use student images. One of the things I do when we do intake, one of the release of information student images forms, that's part of our registration procedure. And if a student doesn't want to be involved, that's fine, they don't have to sign it. But this way I know that everyone who says, hey, I'll be in the picture, sign that document and is cool with being on Facebook or Twitter or social media. Because a lot of people in our place that do not want people to know that they're taking our classes, and that's their right. So again, I want to talk to you about some more tips and tricks where you don't have to create all of your own content. Any flyer that you've seen in this presentation in my section or on the South Suburban College Facebook page or the Illinois Adult Continuing Education Association page, I usually make with Canva or post on my wall. They both have paid options, obviously, but there are a lot of free resources where you can do a lot of things. And of course, I have to say that this content of this presentation does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the U.S. Department of Education, nor does the mention of trade names, commercial products, or organizations imply endorsement by the U.S. government. These are just things that I use and that some of my colleagues have used in the past to help pump up their social media and websites. So your social media manager can use Social Pilot or Hootsuite. Those auto post things to social media without you having to sit there and do it all the time. So once you get really good and have a lot of content, these things will post for you, so you don't have to always be at your computer at a certain time. Next slide. Even more tips and tricks. Your page needs to be welcoming. You need to make sure that when a student goes on your website, your Twitter, your Instagram, they know exactly what you do and it's inviting. The first thing they should see is maybe a picture of your students, maybe an uplifting story. So that it's not just, oh, come August 10th at 9 a.m., come to registration. If you have your own personal social media account, you want to create a pseudonym or a dummy account to run your social media. That way your own social media page doesn't get mixed up in the institutional page, and it's easy to keep track of metrics. In order to find and post content, you need content. So what I do from my page and from my dummy account is I follow every educational, social service, most of the politicians in the area, any coalitions or committees that have information relevant to our students. And so when they post, I just share their stuff out. And that way their information becomes our information and is relevant to our students. And if you follow them, they might follow you. You might have followed the local food bank down the street and they see you keep sharing and posting your things, and then they contact you and you might be able to develop a partnership to further help your students. You also want to follow and share community content. That's why it's important to make sure that you find a way to connect with people in your district and know where your students are coming from. So if your students are coming from these 6 cities, make sure you keep posting content about these areas. Put your social media handles and links on everything. It should maybe your email signature on all your flyers, develop QR codes so that way you're constantly driving people to your page. And also you can use Facebook groups. You follow groups of all the cities, areas, interests in your district, and that gives you even more content. And groups are a great way to spread this message for free. This, now I changed our cover numerous times, but this is one of our covers. It was from our graduation, and it just shows our students, and that's the first thing you see. You see our little bulldog mascot, and you see our students first when you get on the page. Next slide. You also want to do fun things. If you go on our social media page, you'll see this is the chirps challenge. One of our instructors found out that they make chirps chips. These are chips made from crickets. And he was talking to the students of how about 10, 15, 20 years from now, we might be on an all bug diet because it's easier to create mass amount of proteins if you use insects. The students, of course, didn't believe them and thought it was gross. So we bought a bunch of these chips online, and then we ate them on camera and posted it on Facebook. And people really enjoyed it because as students see themselves in content, they're going to like the tag, share out, and then that brings more people to your page. Posts with images produce 650% higher engagement than text-only posts. You're 40 times more likely to get shared on social media with visual content than other content. And Facebook posts with images see 2 times more engagement, and people are 80% more likely to read it. So now you have the content. You want to make sure that you invite people to like your page. Let's say you share something and you get 10, 15 likes. Just because they liked a picture on your page doesn't mean that they're following your content. And you see in the red circle that I have there on the right, if you click that link, it gives you a list of everyone who liked that particular post. And all you have to do is invite them to like your page. Once they like your page, they're following you. So everything you post, they're going to see. You should also create events. So if you're having a registration or you're having a job fair, make it an event on your page. So that way you can see people join it and you'll have more information. And real quick, I want to just say one of the reasons why this is so important is one of off-site analytics. If a student searches for your name, your website, anything involving you, that website, your website sends that information to Facebook and tries to push them towards your social media pages. And it's the same way with Twitter and Instagram. So if Facebook has done some of the work pushing them to your page, and if they go there and nothing exists, or the last post was from 2017, you might have already lost a student. Next slide. So you want to start small and build out. All right, so when you first open up your pages, start posting pictures, have a little fun with it. You know, you're not going to increase enrollment immediately, and don't even think about it as increasing enrollment and recruitment. Think about it as building your brand and building awareness. Don't put too much pressure on it. You know, you're going to get a bunch of stats. Don't get too involved in that right away. We're always willing in adult education to print 40,000 flyers, but we always want to put a lot on social media. You want to experiment, have fun, because failure is going to be part of this process. Social media is your chance to be creative, so have some fun out there. And again, there's more resources. If you go to this website right here, there's a bunch of other social media trainings where I go more in depth on geophishing and paid marketing and advertisement, and there's a bunch of other great trainings by my colleagues in Illinois, and of course the GCF Learn Free, and COABE's National Adult Education Campaign, which has a lot of pre-filled, pre-made marketing toolkits to help you out. And thank you, everyone. And I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn.
Thanks, Christopher. Well, I was taking some feverish notes there. We have a social media person in our office, and we need to step up our game a bit. So great thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. As Christopher did his shout out to his Illinois peeps, I'm going to do mine. I have lots of California folks on here, so I appreciate everyone being here. Next slide. All right, I'm very sorry I'm starting out with a depressing slide, but this slide depicts the effect of COVID-19 here in California. And you know, this is our new 2021 data. So if we look from 2017 all the way to 2021, you'll see a decline in ABE, ESL, and in total, we had a decline from our top numbers for our total students was from 488 plus thousand down to this last year, 260,000. We saw an even sharper decline in our ESL students from 2017-18 from almost 300,000 all the way down to 131 plus some extra students there, 1,000. So those are sharp declines. And then when we look at our ABE declines, kind of our smallest population here in California, one of our smallest populations, 85,000 down to 54,000. And interestingly enough, and I'm sure we're not the only state that saw this, we've seen an increase in our adult secondary education. So it had been decreasing from 2017-18 at 110,000 down to in 1920, where we had the last quarter under COVID, at a little over 71 or almost 72,000, to an increase to 74,000 in 2021. And so that data was very interesting, just to sort of look at how we saw an increase in ASE, but a decrease in everything else. So we needed to figure out, so our agencies are having to figure out how to recruit students. And we have a very large state. We have agencies that are situated at K-12 school districts, community college non-credit programs, community-based organizations, library literacy programs. And so they're all working on how are they going to recruit and do outreach to their students. So if you go to the next page or slide, I reached out to our state with a little survey and asked what they're doing. And I will tell you that it's not anything new. And it's a lot of what Carol talked about at the beginning. It's those tried and true types of outreach and recruitment. So using the US mail, having a marquee outside in the front of your school talking about your adult programs, advertising in your local newspaper. Another great place is to put flyers, outreach flyers at the Department of Motor Vehicles, at grocery stores, and then having brochures about your adult school and strategically placing those in school offices, doctor and dental offices, auto repair businesses. Those are really great places to put brochures about your school because people will pick them up. They may or may not be the student demographic that you're looking for, but they may pass it on to someone they know who is. And then of course, just foot power, taking these brochures around, talking to people when you're out. And for our programs in California, we have so many of our, we have 60% of our students are English language learners, and we really work with our parents, and they're the parents of our K-12 students. So we do a lot of recruitment within those school districts. Next slide, please. And then, Christopher just gave us all sorts of great ideas on how we can up our game in social media and putting things on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I even know we have some sites using Snapchat, although I'm not very good at Snapchat. I just stalk my children. But using your school websites, some of our agencies are getting radio spots on their local radio stations and TV ads for their local jurisdictions for TV. And then a lot of our agencies are also using the Remind app to bring students back that may have left during COVID. So they're really looking at how to do social media. Next slide. Then there's also recruitment in the community. They're having open houses. They're attending, adult ed staff are attending city events. Again, talking about adult education within the community. At farmers markets, having information on a city marquee, not just the school marquee. Banners at all of the schools in the district promoting adult education. Up here in Sacramento, one of our local school districts actually has banners on local transit. And that's another great resource. And then information at family resource centers and of course libraries. So in order to do this recruitment, you really are going to have to blanket your community
with a brochure or flyers or something that's tangible that people can take away. Next slide. And then, of course, you can't overlook the partnerships that you have in your community. You should have partnerships with here in California, it's the America's Job Centers of California, also known as the One Stop. You need to have the partnerships with those partners for Title I and Title III, also working with your Department of Rehab partners in your local community, ensuring that they are aware of all of the adult education programming that you are offering. And your human services within your city or county or community, again, ensuring that if an individual comes in for support services and they need education, that they are making that referral to you, to your adult education program. And then I encourage, I did this when I was a local director, I really encourage presentations at your service clubs in your area, at the Chamber of Commerce. Become a member of your Chamber of Commerce, go to those events. That's a great place for you to find out what's going on in your community and how your students can funnel into jobs. And also, of course, your local workforce development board. Those are all real critical partnerships that you have in your community that you don't want to overlook the using those partnerships to expand your program and to help them bring students to your door. And so, as I said at the beginning, none of this is new. A lot of this is what you know, but sometimes we have to be reminded of those pieces that we know so that we can help drive our student enrollment up. So, yes, they are also great. You're right, for Carol, for recruiting volunteers. And so back to Carol.
Well, hi there, everyone. And thanks all my great colleague presenters for all these terrific ideas. I don't want to repeat some of the things that you've already said, so we'll move fast through these slides because you've already added provided a lot of the information that I want to talk about related to recruitment strategies. So one of the really key things is, and we've said this, but it's really to keep the goals and motivations of potential learners in mind. Are they there to get a job or advance? Are they there for the high school equivalency? Are they there to learn English? Do they want to meet other people? Do they want to change their lifestyle or career? Do they want to increase income? And so if you will also put in the chat, are there other goals and motivations that your learners have that you should be addressing in your recruitment and marketing and branding information? If you have some ideas there, please type that in the chat. And next slide, please. So one of the really important things is that you're establishing your visibility all the time. Recruitment isn't something that you just do at the beginning of your fiscal year. It's something that you have to do every day and every week, and really make sure that you're out in the community, people know who you are and know what you do in your program. So there's some in-person strategies. These are things that we were able to do before COVID. First one is setting up information tables at community events, which I think Carolyn was talking a little bit about, and giving giveaways. Give people some things that are some swag from your program if you can. And some ideas I think that we have found really helpful, because we serve some rural communities, is going out to events like, the harvest festivals, place where people take, their children and, they're just there for social gatherings. You should also schedule open houses after you get information out to the community. I wouldn't use an open house to be the first thing that you do to try to inform people about your program, but invite them after people know who you are so they can feel more comfortable. Invite the friends and relatives of the people that you want to recruit, because they're really important in your recruitment strategies. We've said this, presenting at job fairs or one-stop events, social service gatherings, education events, and Christopher and Carolyn said a lot about the next one, putting flyers in busy places. Maybe one thing nobody said was laundromats. We find laundromats to be a really good place. Can you move the slides? Yeah, thanks. Is another place where people go a lot, and we go back. It's important to go back too and see how many have been taken, and then kind of keep track of that, so you know where people are that you want to recruit are going, and then target where you go to put the flyers. It's really important. Next slide, please. Again, establish visibility all the time. These are strategies that we've used online. We provide webinars for our partners about the services that we provide. During the webinar, we have staff that work in the program talk about what they do in the program and get to know the people in the program. We send out electronic flyers to partners with program information, then follow up with calls to them. As Chris, we have a Facebook page, Twitter account, LinkedIn account, and post regularly. And then we also share information on our own social networks about the work that we do. And if folks want to write in the chat about how they're establishing visibility, that would be great. And I also kind of want to read some of these things that are in the chat. Folks talking about, the goals that and motivations and why people are coming to the program. So Chris says soft skills training. Yeah, that's a really important thing to emphasize, because people really want that, and employers also want that. So they may send people to you if you're doing that. Engaging in the joy of learning. Yeah, that's an important motivation. Maybe helps people come and stay. Anticipating and addressing the students' pain points. But that's an interesting one, Estella. That's really something I haven't heard before, but maybe you can write in the chat about how you do that. And then feeling left out of conversations where, is that that's you wrote a little bit more. Yeah, are those the pain points? Worried that you're missing out. There's some research, Estella, about the being worried about that you're missing out, and that's a really, really good point. Okay, so more tips. Let's see, do we have any other things in there? Okay, do students really know what soft skills are? That's a good point. That's almost like an acronym in some way. But Chris says that they know what they are, and they know they need resume writing and career planning. And so maybe making some soft skills specific examples is really helpful. Okay, you can move through this slide. Establish an outreach team that helps implement your recruitment plan and monitor it routinely. We have a team of people who meet every 2 weeks. We have recruitment targets. We have a list of all the recruitment activities that we do and which ones are most effective. And that's become a really important part of our recruitment plan. And we use a dashboard to track progress. We also have everybody on our staff has individual recruitment goals, so that we monitor and try to make sure that everyone on the team is part of the recruitment and outreach efforts. All hands on deck, that's our motto. Partner with other agencies to identify target populations and make referrals. I'm talking a little too fast here. We've talked a lot about that. Engage completers as referral services, have them do some of your webinars, ask them to recruit specific individuals that they know. That's really something that's been effective for us. Next slide, please. Next, move it move the slide down, please. There's one more there. We also collect information at recruitment, about recruitment at intake. And then we emphasize flexibility and scheduling on our recruitment materials. And make sure your program's accessible. Maybe they aren't coming because it's not the right time for them. So this is an example of one of our flyers, our electronic flyer. We have the QR code, as Chris suggested. You know, we have it on the upper right-hand corner. We really try to say, this is what we offer, these services we offer. We have a little bit about accessibility, you know, it's a remote and in person. And then, you know, some, you know, just key words about what might connect to their motivations and their goals. And of course that it's free. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, I think it's really, really important to do recruitment planning. And so I believe that Marcella has shared our this tool with you. It's essentially just you know, a form where you ask your questions about you know, your target population, your target number that you want to enroll, you know, what information do you want to provide to your target population, costs, where are you going to get the information out, you know, program contact information, you know, what photos can you use? Do you have permission to use them? And then, you know, specific information about, you know, your strategies and who's going to do it and when they're going to do it. And it's 2 pages. And so I can only show the first page on this screenshot, but if you want to take, you know, some time to, is it in the chat, Marcella?
Long just put it in there for us. Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that you might find helpful and, you know, hope you can use it. Oh, okay. And so another comment, Jackie says they have navigators and local programs. That's great. Whose responsibility is helping students overcome their barriers and pursuing their educational journey, building relationships. That's great. All right. I'm going to turn it back to Marcella and wrap it up.
Great, thank you. I did receive a question. It was sent privately to me, but in case anyone was wondering, as we said at the beginning, the recording of this presentation will be available on our Links YouTube channel. I know many of our presenters and many of the people in our chat have said that they're furiously taking notes. So no worries if you didn't capture everything. We will be sharing this recording hopefully in the coming month or so that you'll all have access to it and be able to come back, take as many notes as you need, because really our presenters shared such fantastic suggestions and recommendations and ideas of things that we can all try to increase recruitment in our states and with our local programs. So with that, I wanted to take a moment to pause. I'm going to scroll back up to see if there were any questions. But if you want to take a moment and reflect for yourself and share any questions that you have in the chat, now would be a great time to do that.
Chris, this is long. We had a question during your presentation that asked, what are your thoughts on using digital ads to increase reach to new prospective students?
Is this for me?
Yes, Chris.
Yes, actually, I think digital ads are a great way to push out your message, because we spend so much money on like flyers and stuff, and we have no idea how many people pick up a flyer, walk past a flyer. So digital ads are great. I feel that people talk about word of mouth. Social media marketing is word of mouth, because the student may not see your ad, but their aunt or grandmother or wife or whoever, they'll see it, and sometimes they'll even tag them in the ad, which I think is hilarious because they just put all their business in the street, and I'll go back an hour later, it's deleted, but it doesn't matter. they still saw it. So yes, that's a deeper conversation for how to effectively market through that, but I definitely think it's warranted. And it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Like, less than $100, you can get a lot of mileage out of it.
Great, thank you. Right. Janet shared we are just getting into Google Ads to increase our visibility when people search. So that's great. I know Google Ads can be a little bit tricky, but I think that in the long run, people have found that that's helpful. But as a follow-up, Janet wondered, has anyone else done this? And how did you determine your budget? And I guess, Janet, I hope it's okay for me to expound on that question and ask just in general, perhaps a question for you, Chris, or for any of our presenters. How did you determine your budget for recruitment of your students?
Well, some of it was trial and error. When it first happened, I kind of paid for it because I believed in the concept. And then we were allowed that as an allowable expense through our funding agency. But really it's very minimal because you can get a lot of mileage out of a little bit of money, like, $50 here, $60 there. I haven't done anything with Google Ads. I would like to check that out. But for us, it was basically taking a fraction of what we used publishing flyers and putting that amount into Facebook.
So I have some information, but it's not about a budget for Google Ads. I feel like I resisted for a long time about spending money on recruitment materials and, we can make our own flyers and that sort of thing. We have some creative people. And at one point, I just decided I'm going to try to get this done professionally. And I think it really, really made a difference that, that ad was done by Penn State's, communications department. And, it wasn't cheap, but we've been able to tweak it and use it in a lot of different ways. And it was really, really worth the money. So, I didn't create a budget exactly, but I looked at how much money I might be able to spend, and then I spent it on it. But I did resist, I have to say, for a long time, because there's so many other important things to spend our money on. The other thing I have to say is this last year, when recruitment was really, really tough with COVID, we decided that we had to do some advertising of some kind. So, again, in our rural communities, people still read newspapers, or there's free newspapers. And so we put ads in community papers and in the newspapers. And it was really interesting. In one county, we didn't get any very much, response from the ads in the newspapers, but in the rural counties, we did. So, so that's like another collecting data and making decisions based on, the data that you collect.
Great. Thank you. Did you want to add to that, Chris?
Oh yeah, like, cause safety, like I definitely made some flyers with Canva, posted on my wall, but our publication department is willing to design stuff too. So I would make something in Canva or post on my wall and send it to them, and they would put the professional sheen on it too. So that way you could kind of, like, if you know how you want something, but you don't have the tools to make it look as professional as you think it should look, that's a good place to start too. Putting it together in Canva or post on my wall, and then handing it off to your publications people, and they could, give it that extra next step that it needs.
Great. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment. Just some agreement, Carol, with your point as Chris just echoed, that professionally designed ads and materials lend credibility to the programs. So with that, I guess if there are no more questions, we can go to the next slide. I want to make sure that I can share with you the contact information for our presenters, and of course, thank them for presenting. So Carol Clymer, her email address is cdc22@psu.edu. Jacqueline Kringle can be reached at jacqueline.kringle. And let me spell that for you, JACQUELINE.KORENGEL@ky.gov. Christopher McElroy can be reached at cmcelroy@ssc.edu. And last but not least, Carolyn Zachary can be reached at czachry@cde.ca.gov. Thank you again to all of our presenters. As I said, I keep repeating myself, but this information was wonderful, so incredible. I know that recruitment is just so key and has been such a challenge for so many programs. So thank you all for sharing all of your wonderful information on this topic today. Before we wrap up, I wanted to share with all of you on the call today that we are having an informational webinar related to our Links TA, to share with you a little bit about what is available through Links regarding technical assistance on October 14th. It'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern or 11 a.m. Pacific time. It'll be about an hour, so we'll be done at about 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time. We encourage you to register, come learn about the technical assistance that we have available through Links, and Long has very kindly shared the link to register for that in our chat. Then on our next slide, I wanted to share with you about our next month's webinar. We'll be looking at connecting and sustaining professional development initiatives in your state. That will take place on October 27th, 2021, from 3 p.m. to 4:15 p.m. Eastern or noon to 1:15 p.m. Pacific time. Again, we ask that you register now. The link is in the chat. And we want to make sure that we are meeting your needs. So please type into the chat what questions you have about the topic of connecting and sustaining professional development initiatives in your state that you would like our panelists to address in our next webinar. It's going to be a great webinar. Again, we'll have another panel of experts on this topic who'll be sharing with us about how they do this. I know many of you are juggling multiple initiatives, and that can be really challenging. So we encourage you to join us, share any questions. And we do have a poll for you as you're registering for that now. Again, with our technical assistance, we're always looking to support you. Today's webinar was fantastic, but we are considering offering more targeted technical assistance on this topic. So we're interested to find out if you would be interested in participating in targeted technical assistance around student recruitment. And again, we'll be talking more about what targeted technical assistance means, but just very briefly, that means that we'll be putting together a cohort of states that are interested in this topic of student recruitment. We will identify a subject matter expert who will be working with that cohort of states. So a small group of states who are interested in this topic. Over the next few months, we'll try to get that started if there is sufficient interest. Okay, and as you finish up with your voting on that, again, thank you all for attending today's webinar. I hope that you will register to join us for either the Links TA informational webinar on October 14th, or Connecting and Sustaining Professional Development Initiatives in your state on October 27th, or both. And we look forward to having you join us again very soon. Thank you so much to our incredible presenters. I know I learned so much. I hope that you all did too. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you very soon. Hopefully next month.